Last month when I went on a retreat, I brought only one book with me. The Bible. Ugh, and a big one too. Over the course of 4 days, I read the 4 Gospels. I started with Mark 1:1 and read through until I finished Mark. And I started again at the beginning of Matthew, and then Luke, and then John, treating each Gospel as an individual story to be read. I don't know if you've ever done this, but it's pretty incredible. Unlike what we do at Mass, jumping around thematically, reading little snippets here and there, reading each Gospel as a whole, in order, is a wild experience. It may seem pretty obvious, but we can forget sometimes that each Gospel has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's not just the stories themselves that matter, but how they're ordered, how the overall narrative fits together to say something beyond the individual words. In the story of the man born blind in the Gospel of John, for instance, the Pharisees are preoccupied with asking Jesus where he's from, claiming that they have no idea. Out of context, it doesn't seem all that significant, just a passing comment. But when you read this after you've read the first 8 chapters, when Jesus says that he has come from the Father no fewer than 6 million times, and that those who live in the light know this, the Pharisees' question is powerfully symbolic of their lack of faith, and actually kind of funny. You don't get that unless you read it in order and see how John sets things up at the beginning for a payoff at the end. As much as the individual stories of each gospel overlap and ultimately point to the same truth of salvation, the distinct perspective that each gospel writer has and what they choose to emphasize varies significantly. In Mark, for instance, we find an urgency to mission. The inbreaking of the kingdom of God is upon us, and Jesus, the Son of God, marking the end times, has no time to waste. More than in any other gospel, Jesus is constantly on the move, driving the readers towards the climactic end. Faith, like a seed, is growing in the world even if we don't know how or why, and since the disciples repeatedly show that they don't understand or are not up for the task, it is our call as the hearer of the gospel to take up that mission. For Matthew, the focus is not so much on the fact that the kingdom is in breaking, but on the righteousness needed to enter it. Jesus is presented as the true teacher and king as opposed to the horrible earthly leaders, and is seen as the fulfillment of the law and prophets. More than in any other gospel, Jesus exhorts his followers to be perfect as his Father is perfect, and to embody the fullness of his teaching in a good moral life. In Luke, we see that the inbreaking of the kingdom has a tremendous effect on us and our world. Through meal fellowship and private prayer, emphasized more in Luke than in any other gospel, Jesus, the great prophet, seeks to bring healing to the broken, forgiveness to sinners, inclusion to the outcast, good news to the poor, and justice to corruption. Many of the stories exclusive to Luke, Mary's Canticle, the Good Samaritan, the rich man and Lazarus, and the prodigal son, contribute to the overall theme that the kingdom of God will bring a reversal of fates, lifting up the lowly and casting down the arrogant. And finally, in John's gospel, the most unlike the others, we come to know Jesus as the incarnate Word of the Father sent to reveal the Father. Jesus came from the Father, and that is where he will return. Through a series of 7 highly symbolic signs, Jesus reveals the power and mystery of his divine nature, ultimately bringing the Father glory in his own laying down of his life as the Good Shepherd and exhorting his disciples to do the same. If all you ever do is stick to one gospel or jump around thematically, these revelations stay hidden. I think that you have to read each one individually and sequentially, which is why I've created a guide for you. 4, actually, 1 for each gospel. If you want a deeper look at Mark, Matthew, Luke, or John, start with these videos.